So, hi, I'm Matthew from Living Streets. From the perspective of walking, COVID-19 changed absolutely everything. We've walked more, we've needed more from our public space than ever before. And this means that many more people are seeing how our streets are designed around cars and how they ought to be designed around people. This has sparked some pretty remarkable activity, really. Today, we want to shine a light on the work that we've seen around Britain to make streets safer for walking during the coronavirus pandemic. We also want to talk about what we can all do next and the opportunities that this has presented to build back better. So I'm joined by Rachel, our policy manager. Rachel, it seems like a lifetime ago. What's your recollection of how it all began?
Well, I just remember the 23rd of March and we were all told to stay at home. I normally commute into London and suddenly it's like, right, okay, you're not going anywhere. The whole country went into lockdown. Those of us who could obviously work from home. And for many, the only reason to go out was essential food shopping and for that one form of exercise a day that we were allowed to go out for. And for most of us, that was a walk, maybe a bike ride, because that's the easiest form of exercise there is and the most accessible. And at Living Streets, we were wondering, well, have we got enough work to keep us going? And then suddenly we've entered the busiest period of work I've known for some time. So yeah, that's my recollection really of the beginning of the current period.
Because everyone was walking more, weren't they? And with social distancing in place, it soon became clear that we needed more space to maintain the 2 meters from one another when we were outside our household. I can remember that the first actions that we saw were in countries that were further ahead in the pandemic curve. But then we started to see examples here, didn't we?
Well, yeah, I mean, it started really informally. You've got limits on the number of people can go inside a shop. So people were queuing outside. They have to maintain a 2 meter distance, and that includes the people walking past them. So they were walking or standing, I should say, in the carriageway. And then you started seeing shops putting bollards into the carriageway to make that space just a bit safer and make a clear distinction between where people are standing and waiting and cars are allowed to drive past. So, I mean, those were the first sort of steps towards reallocating the road space, which is what we're talking about here. Then the government came in and said, well, look, we're going to relax the advertising requirements for traffic regulation orders, which is the process that you have to use to formally make space available for walking and cycling in the carriageway. During this period, we wrote to every local authority in England and Wales, asking them to use a whole range of measures actually to make walking safer, whether it was reallocating road space, putting in modal filters, which is, basically stopping cars from going through, but saying you can walk and cycle. We had lowering speed limits, a whole range. Obviously, people have been putting in pop-up cycle lanes as well. But, we're talking about a whole range of measures to make walking and cycling safer and easier to do because we needed to walk and cycle more. And at the same time, then we've had the government come in with emergency funding, £225 million of it for local authorities to do these measures. So there's been a real roller coaster of action taking place across the country, and obviously not just in England, not just in Wales. The Welsh government's come out with its own funding measures, so's the Scottish government. The whole country, the United Kingdom, has been acting to make walking and cycling safer to do. And we've been keeping up and sort of driving that momentum.
So yeah, you mentioned that Living Streets is written to local authorities, and more than 2,000 of our supporters have also used our online forums to call on their council to take action. Many of them have stayed in touch with us to let us know what's been happening near them.
Well, this is the unexpected silver lining. More people are walking than ever before and noticing what their streets are like and what could make them better for walking. As businesses are reopening and lockdown is easing, we still need to maintain those safe spaces. The virus hasn't gone away. We just need to get back to living and talking to each other and working. And, our businesses need to reopen, but we need to do that safely. So, for example, if we look at the hospitality industry, they've been recommended to use car parks and terraces. But if you don't have that, where are you going to put your table and chairs? In the pavement. But where are people going to walk? They should be placing those tables and chairs in parking spaces on the carriageway. We still need to reallocate that road space for other uses so that we can maintain a safe walking environment, which is not only safe from cars, but obviously safe from each other, so that we can be sensible about how we interact with other people who might or might not be carrying the virus. So these changes need to be for that longer term. We don't know how long for, but at the end of the day, having places that are better for walking, better for cycling, are going to be better for all of us anyway. They're just more pleasant to be in. So we want to try and retain some of that, regardless of what happens in the future.
So like I say, then hundreds of 2,000 people got in touch with their council, and hundreds of those have been back in touch since with us to let us know exactly what is happening. Thanks to all of you that have done that, by the way. So what is the overall story, do we think, Rachel?
Well, we've seen lots of stuff happening all over the country. So, for example, in Wolverhampton, we've got city centre changes in terms of temporary cycle lanes, footpath widening. We've seen speed limits reduced on the ring road to make it safer to cross the road. Movements of changing where the bus stops are. Actually trialling e-scooters, but that's a whole other story. We've seen in other places like Birmingham, they're actually reducing the number of parking bays. West Yorkshire Combined Authority have actually got an interactive map asking their residents, where do you want to see changes? What changes do you want to see? So there's a whole range of things happening across the country, really.
So, we've seen impressive work in big places like that, and obviously in other like Greater London, Greater Manchester. But these are all in big metropolitan areas, and they're kind of the usual suspects, aren't they? Are there any examples of progress outside of these areas?
Yeah, absolutely. So, for example, in Colchester, a member of the public wrote to tell us that they closed the high street to private cars. They've put in bike storage hoops outside Marks and Spencer's. They've given the bus lane over to pedestrians under the railway bridge, which is the main artery into town. Measures like that. Then you've got central Bedfordshire, very rural county, I should know because I live just next door. They've put 2 traffic regulation orders in place, one which would allow every single school street in the county to close, and also another one to reduce speed limits to 20 miles an hour. Now, if you were to do that, the whole county would be in uproar. But the point is, if they need to do it, those TROs are in place and they can act really quickly, because half the time, the trouble is the delay in actually installing these traffic regulation orders, the paperwork, the advertising and so on. But they've done these as a precautionary measure. They're going to be in place for 18 months. If they need to act, they can, just like that. And so it just shows what can be done if you put the measures in place.
So that's a nice example, actually. You mentioned there in Bedfordshire. It seems to be sort of there's an eye on the future there. Are we seeing any schemes that are bringing the kind of individual measures that a lot of the examples that we've seen, bringing those sorts of schemes together in ways that promise longer term benefits beyond just dealing with COVID?
So what you're really talking about here is the whole idea of a low traffic neighbourhood, because a lot of the constituent parts would include school streets, modal filters, wider footways, lower speed limits. To be honest, at the moment, London's the leader in the field. We've got the Mini Hollands, we've got funding for new low traffic neighbourhoods, or livable neighbourhoods, or 15-minute neighbourhoods, whatever you want to call them. They're there and they're really great in London. We're not seeing so much of that yet outside of London, but what we have seen is people contacting Living Streets saying, look, I'd love to have one of these in my neighbourhood. I've been working on it with friends. So Jamie from Oxford gets in touch. They want to do that in their neighbourhood. They want to join up the measures that local authorities like Oxford City Council are trying to put in place to manage the pandemic, and say, well, can't we do this, this and this to actually create something that's going to benefit us in the longer term? So, this is precisely what you're talking about. There are initiatives in place, and I think what happened with COVID is it's brought forward a momentum and an appetite to see that happen.
Well, we obviously really hope that catches on some more. Obviously, on the other hand, we've got campaigners that have told us that they've met resistance from their councils. Now, we know to expect that. If this was easy, we wouldn't be in work, would we? What can we advise folks to do in those sorts of situations?
I mean, the government issued some revised statutory guidance on the Transport Management Act 2004. They basically said that local authorities, where there is a high level of public transport use, should take measures to reallocate road space. But then they created a get out clause by saying that areas where public transport use is low should consider all possible means. So instead of should take measures, it should consider, which leads some local authorities to consider and then go, nah, we're not going to do anything. I mean, we had a member of the public get in touch from Worcester, for example, about a school street closure.
My hometown. So
Well,
anything.
they wanted a school street closure in the centre of the city, but the thing is, the council, having recently revised their transport strategy, had the figures for public transport use, fairly low bus use, and they basically said, well, look, the roads are quiet at the moment, so it's safe enough, and when all this is over, everybody's going to get back in their cars, so what's the problem? We don't have to do anything, which is disappointing, but not always surprising. So what we've done is we've asked people to submit their case studies of what has been happening in their area, and we're bringing those together so that when people come across this kind of difficulty, they can look and see, well, actually, such and such has been done in a place similar to where I live, you know, so we can compare and contrast and say, well, look, if you can do that there, why can't we do that here? And it's really trying to share what has been done so that there's less excuse for saying, no, we can't do that where we are.
So what is Living Streets looking for now? This is the big question. No pressure.
Well, look, you know, there's a great phrase, you know, try before you buy. People have been forced to walk and cycle in their local area because that was all they could do. But, you know, they've enjoyed it. They've actually gone out, they've discovered new places, they've seen things that they perhaps didn't know about their local area, which have been a revelation. They've enjoyed the act of walking. I mean, this is what Living Streets is all about, and we want to try and bed that in the longer term. I mean, there's lots of good reasons for doing that. It's good for our health. It's good for cleaner air. I mean, people have noticed cleaner air, particularly in the cities. It reduces congestion. There's so many good reasons for doing it. It's what the government also is pushing for in its new transport strategy. But it's maintaining that momentum because it's so easy to fall back into old habits. So if you're asking what we're trying to do, we're trying to keep pushing, trying to maintain the momentum so that people actually keep doing what they've been doing, keep enjoying it, and get used to a new norm.
Want to get involved? Here's 3 things you can do right now. We still need safer space for walking, so use our online forms and interactive map and let your council know where they can make walking safer where you live. We're stronger if we team up. Become a Living Streets member, find out about joining or even starting a local group, and let's work together. Finally, we need to get ready to build back better. Just around the corner, there are some big opportunities to turn what we've learned into significant, long-lasting improvements for walking and our streets. Sign up for Living Streets emails and you'll be the first to know. For all of this, visit livingstreets.org.uk/space.